Fee, honestly, I was gonna save this for the show, but can we talk about that Daniel Jones stat? Well,
Which the one where he's thrown more touchdowns to
he's
the other
thrown
team.
more touchdowns to the other team than his own team since
Sure.
signing that mega deal. Uh,
Daniel Jones. You must be talking about Daniel Jones.
welcome back, Dunton. Uh, honestly, like,
Definitely not going to win games like that.
are you worried about Brian Dable's mental health that he's actually still starting this guy? Like, at what point are you worried? It's startling, it's mind blowing to me. It's the most.
Hey,
It's
Fanduel Fee, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Do you stack Daniel Jones against the defense, whoever he's playing every week?
Don't answer that. You'll get that answer on this week's Three and Out. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's another episode of the Three and Out podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Cavadi, and joining me, as always, are the best wingmen in fantasy football, Chris Fanduel Fee, Fiumano, and Mike, the Professor Dunton. Of course, it's week 2, gentlemen, where we're heading into week 2 tomorrow night. And that means it's everyone's favorite part of the season where we completely panic, overreact, and try to drop our entire team after 1 week because we're all geniuses and know exactly what to do. Before we get into answering the burning questions for this week, Dunton, welcome back. How you doing, buddy?
We're doing good. Let's take a moment for 9/11 today. We all remember that day. Sad day for sure. So thoughts and prayers, we can use that, obviously today. But other than that, week 1 fantasy football was exciting. Mega Powers had their first win.
Yeah, Dunton, we got problems that we'll talk about when we get to buy it or BS. Fee, how you doing over there?
Yeah, my squad is not good. And I'm talking about my real squad, the Giants.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, but on a lighter note, I did come in third in my FanDuel league.
Nice. Which stack did you use that you talked about last week?
Uh let's see. Hold on. I don't remember. I have to look it up.
Okay. Uh, while you look that up, Look, we're gonna get ready, and again, the theme. There's going to be a theme this week to our buy it or bullshit, and we are going to be looking at that panic switch and the fact that everybody in fantasy football is overreacting right now. So, as Fee looks for that, Fee, we'll get back to that in your FanDuel segment, unless you found it.
I found it.
Okay, what is it?
It was Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. Even though Terry McLaurin did jack,
Yeah,
Jaden Daniels was amazing. But the guys that were good were James Conner, Aaron Jones, and Chris Godwin for me.
yeah, there you go. And you said Godwin. We talked about Godwin and the starts, sits, and the stacks.
Yep.
It's a miracle when Fanduel Fee actually listens to the advice he gives on the show on Wednesday. By the time
It rarely happens. It rarely happens that he listens to him.
See what happens,
I'm
man.
trying.
All
I'm
right.
trying to do more of that this year.
The new strategy. He's going to actually listen to his own.
Listen to yourself.
Right, his own advice.
Right.
He's going to listen to.
All right, ready? That means it's time for week 2. Buy it or bullshit. I gotta get a better sound effect machine.
We got to get a harmonizer.
Yeah. So let's get into it. This is the question on everybody's mind. Let's panic, right? Potential Hall of Fame tight end Mark Andrews' career is absolutely over, and it's officially Isaiah Likely season. Dutton, buy it or BS?
Okay, first of all, the fact that his last name is Likely really helps this entire situation, right? Like, likely he could be the replacement. I wrote in the spreadsheet, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, ...
Won't get fooled again? Is that how
I want to see what happens. I want to see what happens. I mean, it was week 1. I don't want to overreact. I feel like this could be a year after listening to Jim Harbaugh the other day. John, which one is it? John.
Ravens is John.
John. Sorry. Listening to John the other day, it sounds like every week with the Ravens, it's going to be a roll of the dice of who the fantasy go-to person is. Like he said, we didn't get Derrick Henry to run the ball 30 times with Derrick Henry, but that doesn't mean Derrick Henry's going to see a lot of touches, right? So I think it's going to be a week-to-week thing. So I want to see what happens with Mark Andrews this week. I mean, if we start to see a trend of like, targets are important. Let's see how many targets he's getting.
Yeah. Fee.
Yeah, I got something to say about this.
Okay.
So, you said career is over.
Well, I was exaggerating,
right,
of course.
I know. I don't know that his career is over. However, I do feel like at least in the beginning of this season, it's going to be a real kind of stretch for Mark Andrews to do anything fantasy wise. And I think there's multiple reasons for that. Number one, that car accident that he had seems like it was way worse than anyone actually realized.
Well, he never really said what happened, right? He just said
I don't know
injured
what the
in a
injury
car
was.
accident. Right.
Right. I don't know what the injury was, but whatever it was, it's limiting him. And also, number two, the Ravens offensive line, not that great, not as good as they used to be. And you saw it last week where they had to use Mark Andrews as a blocker. And I think that that's going to happen way more often than we think this entire year. And so the combination of injuries and whatever's going on with Mark Andrews right now, plus the fact that he's going to have to block rather than try to get his body downfield when he's injured, is going to open up a lot of fantasy points and stats for Isaiah Likely, I think, going forward, probably throughout the entire year. And that's just my personal feeling about it. I don't have any insider information or anything. That's just the way I see it right now.
Fiumano says likely will be the likely target.
It is likely. I'm saying it's going to be a crapshoot. I think it's the hot hand. And here's what we know after watching last week. Look, Lamar Jackson is a good quarterback, so I'm not saying this in a bad way. But unless it's been like this for 2 years now. Unless his receiver's wide open, he's overthrowing them, underthrowing them. They're all over the place. And he's going to be looking to Mark Andrews and Likely a lot more because they're the closer guys. I think this is an offense that can sustain two tight ends like a Gronk and a Gronk and Aaron Hernandez. I don't know if I'm allowed to bring him up when we talk about football, but the pre-murder Aaron Hernandez and Gronk, there are offenses that could do that, right? And I think this is one of them. I mean, we talked about it, Dunton, because he's on our fantasy team. Mark Andrews fell on a 2-yard screen that it looked like there was nobody in front of him.
He would have had 40 yards easily. Yeah.
Right. And all of a sudden we're looking at a 2-reception, 55-yard day and nobody's hitting the brakes. The dude fell, right? I think Mark Andrews is still a viable fantasy option. I'm not pressing the panic button yet, but I do think both are going to do well in the style of offense that they have. I think this is one of those offenses. Okay, this was an interesting stat I saw. This was the lowest week 1 total passing output by all quarterbacks combined since 2010. Are we panicking on the quarterbacks this year? I mean, if you think about it, the quarterbacks are huge, and if you have a 6-point passing touchdown league, the fantasy quarterback is a huge piece of the puzzle. Are we panicking? Fee, are you panicking about quarterback play overall? And if so, who are you panicking most about?
Right. So I'm not sure that I'm panicking over quarterback play in general, because I think it's all quarterbacks that are going to have lesser stats this year. And I think it's because of game plans and defenses adjusting now to what's been for several years a complete passing league. And I think defensive coordinators are catching up. I think defensive players are catching up. And I think that finally now what you're going to see is that the pendulum is going to start swinging back to running the ball more often, because defenses are so engrossed in the pass that the more efficient way to grind down a game is going to be running the ball. And I think that you're going to see more of that going forward this year.
I didn't even think of that, and I think that's a really interesting point, because football's a chess match, right? Eventually, you get out chest and you figure out the move and you start your counterattack. So that I didn't think about that. I like that, Fee. Nice work, Dutton.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Look what the Lions did in overtime, right? I mean, they just ran the ball down
Ran the ball.
right? Ran the ball because here's the thing. I think quarterback play is down for a lot of reasons. Fiumano, number one reason. Defenses have adapted. It's taken them a couple of years.
Yeah.
You know, when they draft now, they are drafting defenses to stop the pass. They're not drafting defenses to stop the run, right? When you build a defense, you're protecting the pass. You're not protecting the run as much. The other thing is like Deshaun Watson is terrible. Like he is terrible. So there's a quarterback that you as a fantasy owner drafted players around him or him thinking he was going to be good, and good luck to you the rest of the year because he is terrible and it's not going to get better. I heard a stat the other day. Aaron Rodgers hasn't thrown for 300 yards in 24 straight games. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is the first ballot Hall of Famer. He hasn't thrown for 300 yards in 24 straight games.
Yeah.
So things are changing, right? The other thing, it's not that big of a deal, but I noticed it this weekend and I wrote it down just for this moment right here. How many plays a game take away, I would say, 80 yards of passing because of defensive pass interference?
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Right? So, like, I mean, you're losing 80 yards of passing. That's 4 fantasy points if you're in a 20, right?
Very good point. Very good point.
This stuff you got to think about when we look at quarterbacks, fantasy football.
So here's my thing. I agree with both of you. I think you all bring up good points. The one thing we didn't talk about is this. No one is playing the preseason. Nobody is playing the preseason. And when you don't play the preseason, never mind the rust. You know who suffers the most? The offensive line. They're not gelling together. And we saw really bad offensive line play, which is not going to afford a quarterback.
And penalties, right?
Right. Your timing's off, false starts. You're not blocking together. You're going different ways. Quarterbacks are running for their lives. And then so yeah, because of the preseason. And if we go to the Labor Day, Fee, did you say that they were talking about going to Labor Day?
No, Dunton
I brought it up because Roger Goodell brought it up.
Right. So now we're going to go to 2 preseason games and nobody's going to play those at all. So you're going to have guys that haven't played in week 1 that haven't played since, January if you made the playoffs, pretty much.
Which is why, I mean, we've joked, the 3 of us and our friend group and this and that football doesn't really start till October, right?
Yeah.
Like you got to get through the first 4 weeks of the regular season to get an understanding of what a team is, right? And your team could start 1-3, but they could be solid, and then all of a sudden they're 7-3, right? Because of scheduling and this and that. So yeah, you're right. The preseason, all of it plays into quarterbacks, everything.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question was the Daniel Jones thing, but we got so excited on the earlier that we talked about it already, so we could skip over that. But saying the word Daniel Jones reminds me of really bad quarterbacks. Can we talk about Jeff had Bryce Young? I'm not making fun of Jeff. He's usually spot on, but he had Bryce Young as his sleeper quarterback of the year. Gentlemen, buy it or BS, Dunton to you since he's in your backyard. Was that like the worst week 1 performance you've ever seen in your life? Buy it or BS, Bryce Young, you win the award.
I don't know if it's the worst week 1 performance I've ever seen.
Oh my goodness, that was awful.
Let's say this, it was bad, and here's what made it worse, is that you were prepped and ready for it to be like, okay, Bryce, here you go. You're gonna new season, new coach, we're ready. Here we go. Oh no. 2 throws in and you are terrible. Okay, got it.
Oh my gosh, Fee, what do you think?
I mean, I agree with Tutton. It was not good, and I really can't see it getting any better.
No.
I mean, the only one worse was Aaron Rodgers, 4 plays and tore his Achilles, right? That's the only thing that's worse, right?
I mean, listen, Daniel Jones had a spectacularly awful day as well.
Yeah. So it made me think of him. What about Caleb Williams? What do we think about him? Fee, buy it or BS? You're a little worried about Caleb Williams.
I guess I'll buy it. Only a little worried. He has too many weapons around him for him not to be not to get better, not to get better as the season goes on. I think, like Dutton said, offensive line situation will get better. I think their wide receiver play will get better. I think Caleb Williams himself will get better. As the season goes on, as the weeks go on, and he gets more experience and more time under his belt. So a little worried, but not so much.
Dutton.
I was definitely worried the first half. Like, I mean, he looked a little lost at times, like stepping back and like, oh my gosh, they're coming right at me. Oh boy.
Hey,
But
first game of his career.
Right, absolutely. But then as the game progressed, I think he kind of, I mean, let's be honest, the Bears defense and special teams won that game for them. But I mean, the Titans coach said it best. They could have won the game if they punted on first down. Because the Bears were not moving the ball.
Yeah.
So I want, again, I think that's a wait and see, right? Like, we got to see what happens. Like, yes, if you're looking at it, Jaden Daniels looked better than Caleb Williams after week 1, but I also think that was because,
and Bo Nix.
Right. But Jaden Daniels had to look better because the Bucs were dominating that game until, Jaden Daniels had a lot of garbage time points. So, I think, we got a lot of wait and see there. So
I think Jaden Daniels is going to have a lot of opportunity for garbage time points this year. I'm going to tell you
that. That is going to be the case, which is going to help his fantasy.
Right. He's going to have a Blake Bortles season.
Who said?
You did. You were on it, Fee.
Who said?
Did
like this
week is going to be
really
a great
fantasy
Daniels week.
Fantasy year.
Yeah.
Great fantasy.
Yeah. Buy it or BS. Bengals lost me a lot of money because it got me knocked out of my
you and every person on the planet.
Yeah, it was like
that's not true. Me and my brother are still alive. We didn't even talk about the Bengals.
Good work.
Buy it or BS. Bengals suck, and fantasy owners really need to be worried about it. Like, what happened last week? Like, you can't tell me it was because T. Higgins was out. You can't tell me it was because they don't have Joe Mixon anymore. Those things are two non-factors. T. Higgins has missed plenty of games. Jamar Chase has missed plenty of games. They didn't come out and ever look like that. So, buy it or BS, Fee, you are in panic mode over all Bengals because these are guys drafted highly.
I know.
You're in panic mode over Bengals.
I'm gonna say no, only because I think this is part of the overreaction. The real question is Joe Burrow healthy or not?
Yeah.
And that's really what and that's right. Yes, exactly. And that's really what is going to kind of determine how all of their fantasy guys are going to be going forward. If he is not okay, then yes, I'm panicking about the Bengals. If he is okay, I think I need to see it too.
Yeah.
But Jamar Chase should be fine, no matter what, I would think. But everybody else is a question mark.
Dutton.
I literally 5 minutes before our show tonight was watching video of Joe Burrow on the sideline, and I would be worried because there is something wrong with that man's wrist. Because if your wrist is fine, you're not playing with it constantly, and you can pick up a water bottle without having to use your other hand to help you pick up a water bottle. And do the Bengals throw the ball downfield? Because I don't think he threw a pass more than 15 yards downfield. Like, now, is that game planning, or is that because they're worried about his wrist? Like, so all of these things would worry me as a fantasy owner. I would be really worried if I was a Bengals fan.
Yeah. I tend to agree with both of you. It could be an overreaction, but it is all about that wrist. Because if they don't have Burrow, this team's not going very far. Marvin Harrison Jr. and Amon-Ra St. Brown got a lot of attention after their games because Amon-Ra had 3 for 14, and people were kind of ripping on Harrison. And I think Kyler Murray said it's not his job.
Not his job to get him the ball.
Isn't it his job to get him the ball?
I thought it was his job because isn't he the guy who gives the ball to people?
Fee, this was the guy you had as like MVP. You love this guy. Dutton, buy it or BS. We could talk about both of them. You're worried about Amon-Ra or Marvin Harrison?
I'm worried about Marvin Harrison. I was worried, like, even before I wrote this yesterday, before I heard the quote that it's not my job to get him the ball. Because why?
Quarterback? Who else is going to get him the ball?
And why wouldn't, like, I'm sorry, like, come on, you're a 10-year-old kid, you get a new toy, of course you're going to play with it. Why wouldn't you want to use Marvin Harrison? He's a brand new toy on offense. Like, what did he have, 4 yards? He had 4 yards. Yes, I'm worried about Marvin Harrison. I'm not worried about Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think the Lions, again, we're going to do what we need to do to win. Tonight it's not your night, but Amon-Ra, we know who you are, and we might need you next week because we're going to torch the Bucs secondary that everybody's injured on. So be ready. Like, so, you know.
Fake.
Yeah, everything Dutton said. I mean, I agree with everything. I couldn't have said it better myself. But I'm not worried about Amon-Ra at all. He'll be just fine, especially in that Detroit offense. I am worried about Harrison, just because when Kyler Murray says something like that, it just kind of leads me to believe that there's some sort of discourse there, that there's some sort of like there's no cohesiveness, there's no gelling going on, and that's not good.
To get him the ball.
Yeah, that like the whole point is for you to throw the ball out of your hand.
You're paid, right? Like, they pay you money,
so it is your job.
Right, when you throw the ball, it's supposed to go to that guy.
Yeah. So here's my only concern about Amon-Ra, and I'm going to tell you what it is. Like, this was a guy, I think, that was going around the 6th or 8th, 6 to 8 in the first round. He was like the 3rd or 4th, 5th wide receiver off the board. On our preseason show, Jeff and I both talked about how, kind of what Dunton said, after last year giving away that game, they're going to do anything it takes to win, and they have arguably the best backfield duo in the NFL. We're going to see a lot more running this year. They don't want to get in these shootouts. I think Amon-Ra will definitely still have his 30-point days. I think he's going to have plenty of 2 or 3-point days too, that they focus on running and grinding down because they have a tough schedule this year. They want to beat those teams. So in that aspect, because of the inconsistency that he might have as a first-round pick, that's where I'm a little concerned, but I'm still going to hit the panic button. Hearing Kyler Murray say it's not his job to get his best wide receiver the ball has me. I would drop every Cardinal I have,
including Trey McBride.
Hey, man, I've been down on Trey McBride, not because of Trey McBride, because of Kyler Murray, and he only had 5 points last week. Like I told you, he was my sit last week. Like I don't buy it.
What did Kyler Murray have last week? Do we know?
I don't know. I can look real quick. But let's finish buy it or BS, and I'll take a look.
Okay.
We already talked about Labor Day weekend. Oh, Christian McCaffrey. Buy it or BS, 3 and Out is the smartest podcast in fantasy football because we told you a month ago that you would pay the price if you drafted him in the first round, never mind first overall. Fee, buy it or BS, because I think he was still your number 1 running back this season.
No, I don't know if he was my number 1 running back, but here's what I will tell you. I had the first pick in my other league's draft, and I did not take Christian McCaffrey. I took Bijan Robinson over him.
There you go.
So I mean, he may have been my number 1 running back. I don't even remember, but I decided to take Bijan over him because I didn't want to take Christian McCaffrey. And, there's, exhibit A about why I didn't want him.
Done.
We definitely said you were going to be limited in Christian McCaffrey minutes in games. You weren't going to get the full McCaffrey experience because we were talking about load management. I just didn't know we were going to be this awesome at our prognostication, and he was going to miss the first entire game of the season.
Yeah.
And he might be out the second game of the season because they're
Sounds
talking.
like it.
Right. Like, this is, yeah. So, like, if you're a Christian McCaffrey owner, you are definitely hitting every panic button possible. I am sure there are people out there trying to trade him. I will tell you, don't fall for it. Be wary if you're going to be asked to trade for him, because I don't know what you're getting from him this year. And if he does come back, I don't know how long he's out there. I think he is. Yeah, I think this is full on red, flashing light, panic, panic, panic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't. I mean, I think you're going to get some good games out of him, but he's obviously very fragile, as they say. Fee, just so you know, according to Fantasy Pros, if you're where we're looking for sponsors, that's the only time I'm going to say their name. But Kyler Murray had 14.2 fantasy points last week. He was the 15th ranked quarterback, which means he's not a starter even in a 14-team league. And if you look who's after him, it's Bo Nix, Deshaun Watson, Jared Goff, Justin Fields, Minshew, Bryce Young, Dak, Lawrence, Herbert, and Purdy. And then there's more, but that's where I stopped. So there were definitely some startable quarterbacks that actually did worse than him, but he's also the 15th worst, so that means he wasn't a very good start. Okay, well, before we move on, let's just talk about A-Chain, Mostert, Jeff Wilson, and Jalen Wright situation in Miami, because we need to know who to start here. So, Fee, you talk us through it. Do you think A-Chain plays tomorrow night? We already know Mostert's out.
Yep. Mostert is out, and I don't think A-Chain plays at all. I think they're going to stick with Jalen Wright and Jeff Wilson. And I think that because they have those two guys, they're okay with sitting their best running backs, especially if they're dinged up. If they're dinged up, which it seems like they are, obviously with Mostert being out already. But I think with A-Chain, why risk him getting more injured when you have other guys that can probably do very similar things to what they're doing? Maybe not as efficiently, maybe not as good, but they can still win the game without them.
I agree.
And so I think they probably hold A-Chain out at least this week. And I guess we'll just have to wait and see, how he comes along going into next week.
Would you feel comfortable starting both, or is there one you favor over the other?
The rumors have been what I've been hearing, or at least on the internet anyway, in the interwebs, is Jalen Wright is the guy that you want to have. I honestly don't know that it matters. I think you could probably pick or choose either one. Jalen Wright might get more touches or more opportunities than Jeff Wilson, but I feel like Jeff Wilson's a pretty efficient type of runner. And so, you could probably get just as much fantasy points from him as you will from Jalen Wright. It's tough to say who's going to be the guy, especially when they get down near the goal line, who's going to run the ball. I'm not sure. But so I'd probably be fine picking either one of those guys, to be very honest with you.
Dunton, who are we starting? That's basically my question.
Well, here's the annoying thing is that A-Chain apparently looked okay at practice today. He was moving well, but he's still listed as a game time decision. Gee, thanks for that. That means nothing.
Don't start him.
Yeah, I just think it's Jalen Wright. I think he's the rookie. They drafted him. They're gonna go with him. They're gonna see, but that means what? Are they gonna stick with him? Does he fumble twice and then now he sits like I don't know. Yeah, oh boy, yeah. But for you I don't think we start A-Chain.
I think you could start both those guys. I mean, Jeff Wilson had 3 carries for 26 yards in the last game. That's all he did. I mean, he still has that burst. Remember, he had that big game. It was either last year or 2 years ago when he had to be the starter. He has the ability in a spot.
What's that, 8.5 yards a carry?
Yeah, he's nuts. So I think I do think Jalen Wright's a good start too. I think you can get away with both of them if you have to. All right, that was fun. I love Panic Week. It's like we could totally overreact and nobody thinks we're being that crazy about it. Locks of the week. Are we still calling these the Calvin? No, it's the Jameson Williams locks of the week.
Yeah, we have to wait for the next guy to get busted.
Right, the next guy to get busted in gambling. We did terrible last week. Dunton took the Giants. I took the Bengals, as I mentioned earlier. And Fee, you did all right. You took Arizona, which covered by 0.5 of a point. You just got there.
Hey, a win's a win, baby.
Hey, yeah. Our 3-and-out pick was the Giants, so we did start 0-1 on the season.
At the end of that pick.
So since Fee was the only one to get it right last week, Fee, get us started. Who you got this week?
Well, I have two here. I only want to pick one. So the one that I'm gonna pick is the Colts -3.5 against Green Bay. And the reason is because there's no Jordan Love. And as of now, it's Malik Willis. And that just does not do it for me. And the way Anthony Richardson looked last week, while he's not a very accurate passer, the guy is just so dynamic. With that throw that he had 90 yards down the field or whatever the hell that was, and the way he runs the ball, which you saw when he ran through like 4 guys to get to the end zone to score that touchdown. He's going to score fantasy points. I know this is not fantasy, this is betting, but I really like the Colts this week, especially against Green Bay without a quarterback, basically.
Dutton.
I am taking the Eagles -6.5 Monday night against the Falcons. I was not impressed with the Falcons on Monday. I think the Eagles did everything they could to give that game to the Packers, and the Packers kept saying, no, we don't want it. But that being said, I think field conditions and things like that also played a part of it. I think Monday night in Philadelphia, I don't see. I think this could be a massacre. Like, I think this could be like a 21-point Eagle win. Like, this could be bad. So
yeah, I have Drake London, so I'm just hoping for like 3 garbage time touchdowns because I have a feeling you may be right. But it's early in the season, like Cousins.
Right, and that's the thing. You don't know. You don't know. Right? You don't know.
But I do kind of think the Eagles do kind of take it to them the way the Steelers made them look. Okay, so this is not going to be my pick, but I have to talk about this because you guys know after 5 years of this, I don't pick anyone on the road typically, right? Unless it's like it's like obvious. The Los Angeles Chargers are not a good football team. They're not bad, but they're not like the elite of the NFL. They're getting 6.5 points on the road at Carolina, and that tells you everything you need to know about the Panthers right now.
You can get tickets for $10, and it's their season opener.
Yeah. Wait, you said they're getting 6.5 or giving?
No, they're giving 6.5 on the road.
On the road.
And the Chargers are like notoriously a bad team on the East Coast. Like everybody knows that. It's always been like that. Whoever the quarterback's been, they're just terrible on the East Coast. And they're still giving 6 points to the 6.5 to the Panthers. But I don't take road dogs. Something weird would happen. So I'm taking the Chiefs. And who are they playing?
Chiefs are playing the Bengals.
Oh yeah, the Bengals. And that's why I'm taking the Chiefs, giving 6 points. Fee, I see you have another little mark here.
Yeah, so I also had the Jaguars -3.5 against the Browns, and that's basically because the Browns are terrible. And Deshaun Watson is bad, and I have no faith in that team whatsoever. And I think the Jaguars, I mean, they're like a middle of the road type of team. So I have them -3.5 against the Browns. But that wouldn't be an official pick. I just like that.
All right, so who do we want to lock in here?
It's the Eagles. It's the
Eagles.
-6.5. I wanted to take the Eagles. I saw Dunton had them already, so I went another way. But it's got to be the Eagles. I think that gets us right.
All right, let's put in the Eagles.
I'll say this though, Wayne. I like your Chiefs pick because everyone's talking about the three-peat. But what's the cherry on the Sunday for the three-peat is the undefeated season and the three-peat. So why not announce your presence with authority by just blowing through the teams that are supposed to be the teams that are going to take you down?
I got you. So, yeah, that's fair. Before we get to Fanduel Fee stacks of the week, let's get into the new thing that we're going to do. Remember, we're going to rosterbation this year to some of our longtime listeners. And today I like this lineup, gentlemen. Today we turned to longtime listener Anthony, the kid robot, if you would. And here's his team. We're going to read it to you guys. Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, Kyron Williams at running back 1, Kenny Walker 3 sticks at running back 2. He had a lot of points last week. Jamar Chase at wide receiver 1, Nico Collins at wide receiver 2, Dalton Kincaid at tight end, Drake London in the flex, and the Lions at defense. That's a solid team right there.
Fee, it is a solid team, but like with any team, there's a lot of question marks there too.
Yeah, where are your question marks?
Well, Drake London
Yeah, that's
didn't
where
do
I
so
went
well,
immediately.
and now with the way Kirk Cousins looks and the way Atlanta's offense looks, while Drake London is the go-to guy, I mean, what is he really going to get? I mean, we don't really know week to week, right?
Right.
Uh, Dalton Kincaid did absolutely nothing last week, but that's fine. I'm not. That's an overreaction, type of thing. I think he'll be fine. But then Kenneth Walker is hurt.
Yeah.
You don't know if he's even going to play this week. And
Jamar Chase.
oh yeah, Jamar Chase, right? So I mean, you got some issues there in Cincinnati. You don't really know what's going on there. I mean, again, I think Chase should be fine, but those are a lot of question marks. That
Yeah.
is a solid team on paper for
It's
sure.
one of those teams that when you draft it, you're like, yes. And then
Yep.
and then at like 8:30 on Sunday night of this past week, you're like, oh man, this
Yeah, I
team.
wouldn't be surprised. Did he lose his first game of the season?
That's a good question. I didn't ask him that, but I got his backups
It wouldn't
right.
surprise me.
Yeah.
He's got McLaurin at wide receiver at backup. He's got Godwin on the bench. He didn't even start Godwin last week. So
there you go.
Those are great backups to have.
Yeah, and he's got Lockett and DeAndre Hopkins. He had the 7th pick in a 10-team league. That he did tell me that. And then running back, depth at running back is hard for everyone. He's got Javonte Williams, Austin Eckler, and Chase Brown, which isn't terrible. I mean, they're all running backs that are going to touch the ball.
He's got a deeper.
Uh-oh.
The name status of his starters. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Well, you froze for a second. What were you saying? He's got a deeper bench that makes it okay for the starters.
Sorry, what I said was his bench is actually deeper than I thought it would have been with the start out of his starters. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I think he's got a really well-rounded team. Yeah. Yeah. Of course, there's question marks, like you said, this time of year. I don't doubt that. But I think overall, he has a great team. So now we could get to Fanduel Fees, stacks of the week. Fee, well, obviously we know that you took one of your stacks and you won last week. So why don't we jump in and win people more money this week?
Right. So this week is a weird one for FanDuel. There's a lot of what I perceive to be value at the running back position, which means that you're going to pay up at receiver, maybe quarterback, maybe some other positions, because there's a lot of value at running back where you might not want to pay up for. I'm going to switch it up actually this week. I'm going to start with my one-offs first and then go to my stacks. And that's only because I wanted to talk about these running backs.
Okay.
Christian McCaffrey doesn't play. Jordan Mason is 5,500 against Minnesota, and obviously that's because FanDuel came out with their pricing before we knew that Christian McCaffrey wasn't going to play. But if he doesn't play again against Minnesota, I'm not scared of that defense. Jordan Mason looked pretty good last week against the Jets, right?
Yeah.
And at 5,500, that's like as cheap as you're going to get for a really good running back. That would be like almost a lock and load type of play right there. I really also like Isaiah Pacheco going against the Bengals. Bengals defense didn't look great. Pacheco did look great. Kansas City's offensive line is one of the better ones in the league. He's only at 7,400, so it's not like you're I think he's like the 6th or 7th, maybe even the 8th salaried running back on FanDuel, and that's fairly decent. 7,400 isn't an exorbitant amount of money to be paying for a really good running back and a really good team. And oh, by the way, I think he had like 85% of the running back touches or plays for Kansas City.
Yeah, he was out there all
like
night.
Samaje Perine or Carson. What's his name? Carson something Steele. Is taking any kind of volume away from him. So I think that's a solid play too. Jerome Ford for the Browns. Browns still have a top 5 offensive line. Jacksonville is just middle of the road. They don't scare me. He's only 6,300. So if you're looking to save salary, he'd be a good place to go. James Conner, I played him last week, was fantastic. The Rams defense, not great. He's only 6,500. And if Kyler Murray isn't going to be able to throw the ball, they're going to have to run it 1,000 times with James Conner. So that's probably a pretty good spot for him as well. And then the only other non-running back that I had was Ladd McConkey. And I know you had spoken about Justin Herbert earlier, but McConkey did really well for himself last week, and they're playing Carolina. And I know, them West Coast team coming east, and they want to run the ball all the time, but McConkey's only 5,700, and he's their lead receiver, going against Carolina, which we just saw get smoked. So I feel like that's probably a pretty decent play too if you're looking to try to save salary.
I like it.
All right. So to start off the stacks this week, I looked at the Rams-Arizona game because I don't think there's any defense can be played in that game at all. So Matthew Stafford, and I went this way again because we don't really like Kyler Murray exactly right now. But Matthew Stafford at 7,500, fairly cheap for a really good quarterback who just threw for 317 yards, by the way, when everybody else didn't.
Yeah.
Okay. So Stafford to Cooper Kupp, who's 7,700 against Arizona's defense, who just gave up 31 points, I think is a pretty solid stack.
I feel like 28 of the 31 points was in a half too, right? Weren't the Bills down by a lot and then they just ran all over them?
Yep. Stack number 2, and I'm going back to the well on this one, is Jaden Daniels at 7,900. They actually finally priced him up, which is probably the right move. But again, at 7,900, I think he's only the 5th or 6th highest salaried quarterback. Not an exorbitant amount of money to pay, especially for a guy who's going against the Giants defense, who looked terrible. They look terrible as a team. The Giants defense might be okay, but I don't think it's going to matter because Jaden Daniels is going to get his, whether it's on the ground or through the air. And I'm okay going back to Terry McLaurin, who's only $6,000, going against that Giants secondary that did not look very good last week. And then my last stack is Jared Goff in that Detroit Tampa game at 7,800, going to Jameson Williams because Jameson Williams is so cheap at 5,700. And oh, by the way, Dunton talked about it. Tampa's secondary is banged up. And you throw a guy who's got crazy speed like Jameson Williams does, and he just had his coming out party at 5,700. I wouldn't mind going back to the well on that one.
Yeah. I like those. I like you sold me on Jaden Daniels in the offseason because you were talking about him so much. Last time you talked about a college player this much, it was Kyle Pitts. You loved Kyle Pitts.
I did.
Yeah. And so
he finally had a touchdown this weekend.
He did, right?
He 3 years.
He did. He was one of the better tight ends, to be honest.
Yeah, he's going to be great this year. So I like those. I would. How many of the same team can you start in a lineup?
I think it's 5.
Let's start at 5 Chargers is my stack of the week against the Panthers. All right. So let's move on to the final. We're on our way out of the show, and we're going to close as always with our weekly starts and sits of the week. For the starts, we didn't do so hot last week, gentlemen. We took Caleb Williams and we did this. We said we wanted to go a little crazy. We did say that going in for the start.
We went crazy.
Yeah. Caleb Williams at quarterback was a no-go. We were wrong. Javonte Williams at running back was a no-go. We were wrong. Chris Godwin, we struck gold, and Dunton and I did as well because we have him. And Dalton Kincaid just was our start of the week and didn't show up like you said, and it made no sense to me. So let's do better this week, boys. Fee, we're going to start with you at quarterback this week because you already talked about him a little bit, so we'll let you zip through.
It's Jaden Daniels against the Giants. You're going to get the same thing out of him that you got last week. Again, it's a terrible Giants defense. Bottom line.
Justin Herbert against the Panthers. You said it. How many can you start? You're starting Justin Herbert against the Panthers. There's number 1.
Last week, I said Baker Mayfield was my start of the week. Dunton and I flipped back
Wayne,
and
go
forth
ahead. Tell the audience, Wayne. Tell them.
on our newly founded fantasy football team together that we just joined up as teams this year. We went back and forth with Baker and Dak
Literally put him in the lineup
for like an hour, a good hour before.
He was in the lineup for an hour.
Yeah. And then like we went back and forth for like the first 3 hours before the game time. And we went with Dak, and we won, so it was okay.
We won, but man, it would have been great if we won and we started Baker.
And the whole point of that story is I'm going right back to Baker this week. I'm on the Baker bandwagon. It's like you said, that secondary's banged up. I know, Fee, you started it. The Bucs secondary's banged up, and the Lions can score points, and that means we're going to go in a shootout mode. And I'm sorry, I just don't see Mike Evans and Chris Godwin both being able to be covered, no matter how good your defense is. So I'm going with Baker, baby. I love all three of these starts.
I've been on Baker since day one.
You have.
Well, day one with the Bucs.
Day one with the Bucs.
Inexplicably.
Day one with the Bucs. You are right.
Inexplicably.
That is fair. It is
funny that on this show he went with Baker on the Bucs.
I know, not you. But you also hated Brady on that when we talked about
I did.
Who are we picking here? I love all three of these.
I love all three of them, but
I love all three of them.
Let's do it. Let's ride the Baker train.
We got to go Baker. All right. Running back. We're going Baker. Nice. Running back. Dunton, we'll start with you.
Because I heard him say it and because he got pressure, I'm going with Derrick Henry versus the Raiders, only because I think they get up big and then they just use him to run out the clock second half. So like 89 yards, a touchdown or two maybe for Derrick Henry. You'll be happy with it this week.
Wait, go back to that. You heard him say what? Did I miss that?
Yeah, so he was in a press conference and they said, how come Derrick Henry didn't touch the ball a lot? And he's like, look, we got Derrick Henry, but it doesn't mean he's going to touch the ball 30 times a game. But it also means like he's going to use him when he needs to use him. And I think this week is one of those weeks where like the Raiders are not going to challenge the Ravens. I'm sorry. They're not. Like,
yeah. Fee.
Yeah, I'm going with James Conner. I spoke about him a little bit earlier. Going against the Rams, I think that the Cardinals are going to have to run the ball to be able to move the ball on offense. So it's James Conner all day long.
Dunton, we're gonna go.
Yeah, this is great. I love it. I'm
gonna explain why. I want to explain why everything. Okay, Josh Jacobs is my start of the week at running back. The Colts let Joe Mixon do whatever he wanted to them last week. And now I know what you're going to say. CJ Stroud is a lot different than Malik Willis. But here's my thinking, and I'm going out on a limb here. They traded for Malik Willis like what? 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks, like, week three of the preseason.
Right before the season started.
And the Packers have all these guys that could be really good short wide receivers and take the ball a long way, like those quick, speedy guys that you could do a lot of quick things with. So they probably saw something in Malik Willis that think they make that he's going to work well with these wide receivers, which means that the Colts can't just go after him all night and sell out. And like I said, they let Joe Mixon do whatever they want. So I still think no matter who starts, because there is talk that Jordan Love's allowed to start this week if he gets medical clearance. I don't know if you saw that, but he said it. But I don't even care if it's Malik Willis. I'm still going Josh Jacobs after watching the Colts not be able to stop us. I mean, CJ Stroud had 2 rushes for 18 yards. That guy doesn't run. Like, it was crazy. So you guys are both shaking your head. We'll get to it when Dunton has his sit. Who are we locking in? I know Dunton's not going to go with mine. So
Derrick Henry.
Yeah. Okay. I think crazy talk.
I feel like you can lock that one up.
I'm going to start with the wide receiver as I always do, and I'm going with Chris Godwin again. We went with him last week. I love him back in the slot. I know it was so talked about, but he's like, it's like Michael Jordan. I'm not comparing him to Michael Jordan, but it's like when Chris Godwin's in the slot, you're just not going to stop him. He's going to catch 10 balls a game for some reason. So he's my start of the week. Dutton.
I love that start. I know that we're down on Daniel Jones, but they have to throw Malik Neighbors the ball. They have to. And
can they is the question.
Listen, they have to. So we'll see if they can this week. And the Commanders were terrible last week. I mean, like don't get me wrong. Baker looked awesome, but Baker looked awesome.
Yeah.
Because Commanders could not do anything to stop the pass. So Malik Neighbors, right? And if it can't be Malik Neighbors this week, then the Giants need to blow it up and go get Joe Flacco. So
yeah, I love it. Fee.
Baby.
I love this pick, Fee.
Yeah, so I want, again, I am trying to take guys that aren't exactly starters necessarily on your fantasy team, but I really like Keon Coleman this week against the Dolphins. This game should be somewhat of a shootout. The Dolphins are probably going to put up a ton of points. The Bills are going to have to throw the ball in order to stay close. Keon Coleman, Josh Allen obviously likes him a lot. He had the most targets last week for them, and I don't see that changing. Yes, Dalton Kincaid might, eat into that a little bit, but I think they're going to throw the ball enough that Keon Coleman should get plenty of fantasy points for you.
Yeah. I like Coleman. I obviously like Godwin. I cannot go with anyone on the Giants offense.
No, I know you can't. That's right, but you got to try and put it out there.
I like it.
Here's the deal. We're not going to start Malik Neighbors. I think a lot of people already start Chris Godwin.
So let's go Keon Coleman.
And what I was going to say is I think this is the last week that we're going to tell people to start Keon Coleman that are not starting Keon Coleman.
Because he's going to be a starter.
Because I think the Bills knew what they were doing in drafting this guy. I really do. Josh Allen fell in love with him week 1. The guy is big. He is fast. He catches the ball, and he's fun. And I love it. I love it.
Let's go. I'm good. I love that pick. A tight end, Fee, back to you. I love this pick. I'm going to tell you, you talk about it, and then I'll tell you why I love the pick.
So I'm going with Brock Bowers. He was, again, one of the few tight ends that actually had a decent week last week. Gardner Minshew seems to want to get the ball to him. The Ravens have not been good against the tight end. And I think that in order for the Raiders to do anything significant, they're going to have to keep Bowers involved.
I like the pick because I saw going into the game. Remember, he was dinged up in the preseason. NFL Network, I think it was CBS, another site. Everyone was calling him a bust and sit this week. Not a bust on the season, just for this week because he hadn't played and he looked great. And I love Brock Bowers, and he was my favorite player in the entire draft. So I'm glad you picked him. Dunton, go.
I'm going with Fiumano versus the Broncos. Broncos defense was solid against the Seahawks. I think they'll be solid against the Steelers. That offensive line is young and experienced still. He's got to get the ball out fast. It's Justin Fields again starting at quarterback, which I think is the right move for the Steelers anyway. So I think the universe is telling them you got the right quarterback and keep Russell on the bench, which will be interesting to see how long Russell stays there until he gets traded to some team that needs a quarterback. But start Fiumano this week.
The Giants.
Oh, there it is, everyone. You heard it first.
I went sneaky deep on this one. I'm going to tell you why I'm going Hayden Hurst on the Chargers against the Panthers. The Panthers allowed 2 touchdowns to the tight end last week, and most NFL teams don't allow 2 touchdowns to a tight end in the entire season, right? Like these guys allowed it to happen, and Jim Harbaugh is way too smart a coach not to see that. I think Hayden Hurst has 3 receptions for 22 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Oh, I love that stat line.
I think that's what he does. He cleans up down in the red zone. And that's my sneaky start of the week. I would love to go Bowers.
I love the Bowers pick. I do. Because
I really love my Hurst pick. I hope Hurst, I hope that stat line is so close because that would be the best stat line for a sneaky start. All right, so let's review. Quarterback start of the week, the 3-and-out quarterback start in the week, Baker Mayfield. The running back is Derrick Henry. The wide receiver is Keon Coleman. And the tight end is Blake Bowers. And then we're moving on to sits of the week where we did okay as a team last week. We said to sit Brock Purdy. He was 18th, I think I said when I was reading the Kyler Murray numbers. Maybe even lower. Brian Robinson Jr. was kind of right on that cusp. He was the 14th best running back, so you'd still start him. But it's not a top 12. And when we like to say start or sit, we want you to be in the top 12. We want you to be the RB1. So George Pickens was the 26th best wide receiver. We told you to sit him. And then Cole Kmet, we told you he was going to be probably the odd man out in that loaded Bears offense. But with Caleb Williams' play, it turned out that everyone was the odd man out and nobody did well.
The Bears offense was the odd man out.
Yeah.
Thank God for the defense.
Let's go, Dunton. Let's get started with your quarterback sit of the week.
Anthony Richardson against the Packers. Say what you want. He looked great at home, but I think that Packers defense is going to be what carries them through the next few weeks with no Jordan Love. So sit Richardson in Lambeau Field.
Okay, I like it. Fee.
I'm sitting Kirk Cousins. It's very obvious that his Achilles is not healed, and he looks terrible out there. I wouldn't be surprised if Atlanta went to Michael Penix sooner rather than later.
Maybe that's why he played a lot more in preseason.
I don't know. I don't know if I buy that. I think he's just getting ready. It's going to take a little bit. He's Kirk Cousins. We love to make fun of him, but he'll still find his way to get his 400-yard, 3-touchdown games. I don't think it's this week, though. I agree with you.
Not against the Eagles.
I don't think it's this week. I think it's by like week 4. I'm going with Trevor Lawrence against the Browns. Fee, I don't disagree with you taking the Jaguars. I just think this game is going to be like a 10-7 slogfest that is not exciting for fantasy at any purpose. So what are we thinking here? Cousins. Okay. After all the preseason controversy, he's like making it like they did the right thing. Okay, Dunton, take it away. Tell me why I'm wrong.
I don't think you're wrong. I like your theory. I just think, I don't know. I'm worried that the Packers are going to struggle this week. I think they can get better after this week. I just think that the Colts are going to dare Malik Willis to beat them, and they are going to stack the box, which is going to make it hard for Josh Jacobs. Watching the game last week, Josh Jacobs did not look good in the first half.
I get that.
My daughter and I were texting. She's a Packers fan, and she's like, we got all this. We paid money for this guy and got rid of Aaron Jones. But then if you look in the second half, when the game opened up, because they could pass the ball more, Josh Jacobs' stats improved, and he looked better. I don't think they're going to have that opportunity this week. So worried about that this week.
Fair enough. Fee.
I'm sitting Javonte Williams. We told you to start him last week. That was obviously a very bad idea. Jaleel McLaughlin had just as many, if not, I think maybe one more carry than Javonte Williams did. I'm not sure it's that the Broncos don't trust him or that he's just in a running back by committee, but against that Steelers defense, who by the way looked fantastic.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen for him this week.
I agree. I'm going David Montgomery, and I don't think he's like a bust by any means, but here's what I'll say about it. Why am I going Montgomery? So the splits, everyone's talking about the splits and pressing the panic button on Jahmyr Gibbs. I saw a bunch of people, talking heads doing that. The split wasn't as shocking as everyone made it seem. Montgomery had 17 carries and Gibbs had 11, and obviously Gibbs dominates the passing game. All right. Let's not forget he was a little bit dinged up coming into the last week too. So they probably didn't press him there. I think the split is going to go more back to even this week. And I think he's just too much of a weapon to Gibbs. That is too much of a weapon not to get more involved. So I think Montgomery has a good day. It's probably 80 yards, but I don't know that he gets the touchdown this week. It may be Gibbs country. So I'm saying to sit Montgomery because I think Gibbs is a full steam ahead.
And aren't the Bucks better against the run?
Bucks are like the best run
against the pass.
Yeah, defense. That team is built to stop the run.
And Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the best pass catching running backs in the game.
Right.
So it's like the perfect game for him to be in the field more than Montgomery. So who do we want to lock in? And because Montgomery had that monster week last week, I could see everyone going to start him. So that's why I'm saying to sit him.
I think we should sit Montgomery. I like that.
Yeah, I like that idea.
It makes a lot of sense.
Thank you. Wide receiver sits. I'm going with George Pickens. I don't see it's against the Broncos. The Broncos were the Seahawks scored most of I think maybe all their touchdowns on the ground actually against that Broncos secondary. Not that it's great or anything, but I also don't think Justin Fields, if he's the starting quarterback, is much better than the Broncos secondary. So if you like the 6 for 85, that's what Pickens did last week, 6 receptions for 85 yards. It got him the 26th best wide receiver points. If that's good for you, then start him, but that's not good enough for me, so I'm going to sit him. And I don't think he does any better than that. He could do worse.
Especially in non-PPR, which are rarely out there, but half PPR, that's not a lot of points.
Yeah. So I just I need something better than that. I don't think it's his fault. I think that offense is in a lot of trouble. Fee, to you.
I'm sitting all of the Packers wide receivers against the Colts. All of them.
I do, even though I think that they'll be able to spread the ball around a little bit because I'm not sold on that Colts defense. I wouldn't start any of them. I think they're all going to be like 30
scary week.
Yeah,
scary week
good luck
in Green
picking.
Bay.
Good luck picking one.
Right. Yeah.
You know, who's
so I
it
agree
be?
with you is what I'm saying.
Is it Dontavian Wicks? Is it Daubs? Who is it?
Yeah, I agree with you.
Hit them all.
Yeah. And then Dutton.
I agree with you on Chris Godwin in the slot is automatic. I think this week the Lions will focus on shutting down Mike Evans. And to be fair, Mike Evans scores a lot of his touchdowns in the red zone, and I don't know if the Bucs get into the red zone a lot this week. That worries me. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, because Mike Evans is one of the greatest wide receivers of recent history, and the guy drops every 80-yard wide open
ball ever, right? But put him in the red zone, and he's automatic.
he won't drop a ball. Okay.
I think the Packers wide receivers is a good sit, only because of the variety.
So here's my
question.
Here's my question about that. Okay, I agree. So you got Reed had a big week last week, and then you got Dobbs
this week.
You got Dobbs, you got Wicks, and you got the other guy, Christian Watson.
Right.
How many of those 4 guys all together are even like a lot of people didn't start Reed last week? How many of those guys are legitimate starters? I agree that you should sit them all, but I also agree most of them shouldn't even be starting in the first place.
That's valid.
That's fair.
So that's why I would like to go either Mike Evans or George Pickens here. That's my rationale behind that.
That was a valid point you made.
I like sitting both of those guys.
Well, you have to pick since there are both choices.
Okay. Let's sit Pickens. I think that's a smart play.
Okay.
I'm fine with that as well.
So, Fee, we're going to finish with you. Tight end. Bring it on home.
I put 2 here only because I took Komet to sit Komet last week, and I didn't want to pick him again. But I put him there because I think you should sit him again. Yeah. But my real pick is Evan Ingram against the Browns, and it's because yes, he did not look or Jackson. Yeah, he didn't put any points last week for Jacksonville's offense, and I think part of the problem is they're going to spread the ball around so much because they have so many different guys now between Brian Thomas and Christian Kirk, and Evan Ingram and Travis Etienne, and there's so many just options now for Trevor Lawrence that Evan Ingram is just kind of going to get lost in the mix. And you could still start him because the tight end position is so bad currently. But I just think that with the way that Jacksonville is going to spread the ball around, he's just not going to be a top tier tight end like you expected him to be.
Done.
Like a good comedian, I'm bringing it back. We started the show talking about should we panic about Mark Andrews? So why not sit Mark Andrews this week? Because you want to see what happens. So go ahead and sit him and then be mad about it next week that you sat him.
I feel like for like a good majority, here's my only thing on that. A good majority of the history of our show, we have talked about the fact that the Raiders have yet to stop a tight end from scoring a touchdown.
Right. So, but that means Isaiah Likely.
That's fair. Valid point. I'm going to say to sit Hunter Henry against the Seahawks. I don't know. I just don't think that the Patriots catch lightning in a bottle twice, and the Seahawks are typically good in the middle of that field and taking out the tight end. So I just think Henry struggles. I do think Cole Kmet's the sit of the week, but
I do. He is the sit of the week.
We could put him if you want, but again, that would be the same pick we had last week. So let's mix it up. I I don't want to say Mark Andrews only because we have him, Dunton.
I know.
Take Evan Ingram. He was my real pick.
And we go
unless you don't agree. I mean, that's fine too.
I told you I think that game's 10-7. I don't think anybody.
Yeah, no, I think it's fine. I think Evan Ingram is a great one to sit because this could be the week that Christian Kirk has like the 78-yard touchdown to make it to 7 points, and then they get the field goal.
Right. So punch in Ingram. So our 3-and-out sits of the week at quarterback Kirk Cousins, at running back David Montgomery, at wide receiver Easy Pickens. We got to bring back that nickname. And Evan Ingram at tight end. Those are 4 people that everybody's starting, right? Like those are bold picks. Good job, everybody. All right, so that brings us to the conclusion of yet another 3-and-out. Remember, we're 4 episodes away from episode 100. So if you're liking what you hear, give us a like, give us a follow down there. Remember to make some comments. Ask us questions on your lineup. We're usually good at figuring these things out. Dunton, Fee, anything to add to our audience before we hit the road for another week?
Week 2,
don't
baby.
overreact.
Yeah, it's week 2. Week 2, settle in. Week 2 is going to tell you a lot. You're going to see a lot more scoring. You're going to see your stars are going to rise to the top. Week 2.
Yeah. Trade your entire team, cut them, go to the waiver wire right now. It's all over. The sky's falling. We'll be back with you next week. Thanks for watching 3-and-Out.